Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sound Vibes podcast. We are your hosts. I said we this week because it's a we thing and it's not a possessive thing, and I'm a single entity and you're a single entity, but together we're we. It's NATE and Patty McD. Say hello, Patrick.
Hello, Nathan.
How are you today, my good sir?
I'm good.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Are you psyched?
I'm pretty psyched.
We are on episode 7 of
Yes.
Sound Vibes. We've come a
Yes.
long way.
We have. And I'm psyched because we're talking about a topic today which is particularly close to my heart.
All right.
And fascination. And it's something which I'm actively engaged in, because I wear many hats. Sometimes I'm performer, sometimes I'm show promoter, and
Other times you're just old Pat.
yeah.
Good old Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this week we decided we're going to talk about performance. Like life on stage, actually. But we're keeping in mind also, that this is a journey and we're not pretending to be experts per se.
We are not experts. Disclaimer, everybody listening right now, we are
Yeah.
not experts by any stretch of the imagination.
We are on a journey. We're hoping you're on it with us, and we're exploring how to just be better at what we do tomorrow than we were yesterday.
And if you're listening now on episode 7, I sincerely hope you are better. Because if you're not, then we're not doing our job.
All right, so we're going to talk about the evolution of live production, and how start-out bands can think differently about their creative approach.
Indeed.
With live production in mind.
Yes.
So I'm going to kind of kick this off and say that, there's a very traditional approach to performing live. And that is, you bring your guitars, you bring your amps, you bring your whatevers, you plug it in, you yell a bit at the sound guy, he yells a bit at you, you fight.
You fight in real life.
Yeah.
I had a few guys wanting to punch me in the face.
And basically by the time the doors open, you've hopefully worked your issues out and you're ready to do a show.
And then you go live and all that sound prep was worth nothing.
Sometimes that is the case. But we want to talk about how we can avoid that kind of situation.
Yes, sir.
So, the traditional approach to performing live is your band has a number of instruments. You take those things, you use them, and everyone's happy.
Most of the time.
Yeah. So, but what we've also seen with time, and now it's becoming quite prevalent, is the inclusion of special effects and extra. Let's for now call it extra. In other words, you have audio components of your performance which are not actually necessarily performed by a human.
So technologically implied in the live environment.
Yes, things.
Backing tracks and whatnot.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not new. It's not new,
not at
but
all.
it's certainly becoming more prevalent. And we might ask ourselves why. Why, are musicians getting lazy?
No.
And it's no. We're just trying to blow your minds more.
Adding production value, or EVs as I like to call it, effort value.
Yeah. So one example that I want to because there's a lot of people out there who have a bit more of a, let's call it a purist mentality towards this, and they say it's not real musicians getting on stage if they can't play the stuff.
Oh, this act's just plugging in a USB to his laptop. He's not a real
Yeah. So look, at the end of the day, when we're on stage, our role shifts from being primarily a musician to being primarily an entertainer.
The line is very thin, but it must be towed.
Yeah.
It must be towed.
It doesn't mean we're no longer a musician, but our primary focus is we have an audience, they're here to be entertained, and it's our job, our responsibility. We have an obligation to them to blow their minds.
Indeed.
And let's face it, it's not to say that the traditional way of doing performance is cuck.
It's not dried up.
Yeah.
It's not at all.
It's just, I think we've moved into an age, an era, where people have become so accustomed to extra that if we're not giving them the extra, they feel that, oh, but this is weak.
Yes.
So, many bands are saying, no, but we're not going to do it. And that's fine, and it doesn't mean that the band is weaker, and it doesn't mean that they're not able to put on a compelling performance. So we're not going to say that this podcast is about changing your mind, saying you have to use these technologies. We're not going to bully you into that, but we are going to explore these technologies a bit, see how they're being used, why we think they're being used, and if you think you would like to try and use them, how can you do that without setting yourself up for a disaster?
True.
So I'm going to reference the Wacken metal battle as one example.
Okay.
Now, I know we're talking heavy metal again, but I'm using this example a bit because whilst we talk about Wacken Open Air as a huge festival that happens in Germany every year for the last, 30 years? I think this year is their 30th.
It's their 30th this year. Yeah.
So, but, they've got this Battle of the Bands sort of tagged onto this event, which has been running for many years already, and it includes participants from about 30 different countries. And one of the rules for a long time during this battle was like no backing tracks. And
that I never could understand that. Never.
Well, I could understand it because I come from that era where it's like a backing track was frowned upon. It says no, but this is not real music. Then it's not a real band performance if you have this like crutch.
Well, to me, it's not a crutch because that could have come out of the jam room.
Yeah, but you're from a modern era.
Yeah, but you're from a modern era.
Remember, I was born in 1980.
Weren't we just discussing this a week ago, saying aren't we both millennials?
Yeah. So, our topic is the evolution. Now, the evolution happens not only out in the physical world; it happens in our minds as well. And what I've noticed is that the Wacken battle, they have relaxed that rule.
Have they?
Apparently, yes.
Oh wow. So good for them. Evolution.
Yeah.
Progressive movements.
So it kind of tells us that this old school way of thinking is now actually becoming an old school way of thinking.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. Please.
And now we can see. All right. So this particular matter of evolution, like it opens up doors, and I think I really came to understand it thoroughly. Properly for the first time was actually watching a particular band live who I didn't really enjoy until I saw them live.
Didn't enjoy them as in you heard a recording of them?
No, I couldn't stand them until I saw them live. And the band was Bring Me the Horizon from the UK.
Oh, okay. All right.
They came and played at Ramfest, I think it was 2013.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So, listening to their albums, I'm like, it's not for me. It's heavy music, and I like heavy music, but there's just something about that band, it just didn't, resonate with me. So I was like, not interested.
Yeah.
But now they were playing a festival I was at, and it's like, cool, all right, well, I'm going to check them out because, I'm here. And
may as well.
Yeah. And they blew my mind completely, like utterly blew my mind. And, me being the analytical thinker that I am, I'm like, why? How did this happen? How have I been transformed from a completely uninterested, even a hater,
even
a hater, into a fan?
You said it earlier with such malice. I was like, wow.
Yeah. But the thing is, they had employed technologies to just bring this next level live performance experience. I was entertained.
So they towed the line perfectly in between being musos or musicians and entertainers. They got it right. They got the balance right.
Yeah. And look, entertainers don't need technology to do it, but I think it's like, we live in a time where we're bombarded by stimulus constantly, and it's all like next level epic. Like I was watching about a year or two ago, a friend of mine got Doom, the shoot 'em up.
Oh yes, the game.
Yeah. And at the time, like the big hoo-ha was the soundtrack, and like how sophisticated the like soundtracks in gaming has become. And like it was kind of weird because my circle of friends at that time were were more interested in the Doom soundtrack than they were in like some really awesome releases from bands.
Well, I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I downloaded that soundtrack.
Yeah, so now we ask ourselves why, but it's because it's so much stimulation. You know, it's such an oral soundscape. And what we've seen becoming a trend is how live performing bands are expanding their oral soundscape in live performance as well. You know, guys bring intro tracks to shows where it's big and dramatic and it's like, you know, and then the show starts and it almost falls flat on its face following that epic intro. It's like, all right, so now, you know, I find it's almost counterintuitive because the intro is like, it sets the mood, it sets the mood, it sets the mood. But it almost like over delivers, and then the band comes and it's like, all right, but the band's not bringing me that same goose flesh I felt when that intro played. So one has to ask, all right, so if we're going to employ things like intros, should we not employ that approach into our creative process, broadly speaking, as well? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do anything. I'm just exploring the idea and dredging up examples where I've seen this work. And Bring Me the Horizon was a fantastic example where it worked.
They were able to balance what they brought in their extra tools. You know, I would call it a tool, like that extra oomph, you know?
Yeah, extra oomph.
Yeah, so they brought it in, but when they delivered, after they brought the extra wasn't the star of the show.
No.
If that makes sense. The whole performance as a whole, including that little extra oomph, was it was like a whole package. It was a whole package. Yes.
It wasn't a powerful intro followed by less than that.
Okay. Well, I can attest to that. I've seen a lot of local guys do that, where their intros are nice, big, beefy, crazy, dramatic power pieces, and then next thing you know, the guys hadn't been in the jam room for like a month before and then they do this performance, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, so are you using it as a crutch, or are you, you know, that would be fulfilling the stereotype, honestly speaking, but are you using it as a tool to enhance what you already have, as opposed to using it as a jail out of free card for laziness?
Yes, yeah. Like, I think that's a good way of looking at it. It's like, because yes, you know, it's kind of like a crutch. And look, let's face it, when we're on stage and we have to entertain an audience, there's a considerable pressure. Yeah. But because, you know, it's a very competitive environment. And when I say competitive, it's like, you know, it's the same as when you're recording and releasing online. It's competitive because you're asking people for their time and their attention. Are they getting their money's worth, basically, is what it comes down to. And, you know, we have to transport them to a parallel universe. And
in another world.
Yeah.
Where everything is surreal.
And we've got to do this with sound and light. And I think a lot of bands, when they're writing music, they're not thinking about the payoff, the live show, always.
Not always, no.
And
sometimes they're thinking about, we're just going to play the show so we can get the hell out of here.
or no, it's not even. They're not even thinking about the show at all. They're just thinking about the song in the moment that they're writing it, and it's like, you know, that's fine. It might be a good song, but like what I'm kind of getting to is that if your creative process also includes the like payoff of the live show, it's like, would you be approaching your creative process differently? Would you be considering to incorporate these extra elements? Would you be concerning yourself whether you have a physical person on stage able to play this or perform it? Or can you employ technologies to help you get that done? Because another thing I'm noticing in the current day and age is bands are actually trying to downscale.
Downscale, how do you mean? In terms of writing or terms in performance?
The number of mouths to feed.
Oh, well, again, we can go back to hobbyist versus career muso.
Yeah.
A lot of hobbyists don't make anything on shows. Like, most of it's made in merch. And even with career guys, a lot of them, with the decline of physical album sales and stuff like that, it just comes down to merch and pushing your brand like that and your marketing and so on.
Yeah.
So in terms of mouths to feed, yes, I can understand why a career band would downscale.
Yeah.
But for a hobbyist band, it's not really a necessity unless they have that aspiration to go further.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember in the late 90s, it was not uncommon to find that bands were having like 7 or 8 members.
Yeah.
Just because they wanted that authenticity of saying, all right, well, we've written the song which now includes a violin. So we're not going to get a full-time violinist to join the band, even though they only feature in like, parts of songs.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was the done way to like do things. But it's like, here's a mouth to feed. Now you got a tour. Travel is expensive. Accommodation is expensive. Food is expensive. So like having that extra component in your creative process at that time where we weren't thinking technologically, like we would say, all right, well, let's get a person involved. And
well, you don't have to pay a USB flash drive.
Exactly. But once upon a time we were thinking of it very differently, whereas nowadays performing live, if you can play, or if your drummer can play to a click track, a whole universe of possibility opens up to you. But you don't even have to play to a click track, because I know a lot of people in the live context are very opposed to it. But you also have sampling, triggering units that can like trigger samples. I remember watching, who was it? Carnifex.
Yes. Deathcore band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they have this big bass boom, and it like rattles the whole room. Like I think it rattled the whole block. And it's like now they're incorporating an electronic element. It's not a real instrument, the purists would say. It's a special effect, but it's at least performed live. It's not playing to a click track. This guy actually has a thing that he physically hits.
Yeah, but it's an electronic drum pad that you can link samples to for the sound that you get when you strike it. So in some cases, I think there's a line there where you got your purists on the one side and you got your more forward free thinkers on the other side that would incorporate it. But I mean, if you're physically making it happen, if you're physically putting time and effort into creating that sound as part of your live performance, I would say that leans more towards towing the line. Like, I don't see why a purist would find, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see how a purist would find that taboo.
Well, I think taboo is a great word to describe it, because this is the evolution.
Yeah.
There was a time where this was very frowned upon. I mean, I remember I've been a follower of Iron Maiden for as long as I can recall.
Yeah.
And I remember there being like quite a lot of like from the purists when Iron Maiden used a keyboardist during the album Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And it's like, this was regarded as the most unmetal thing to do. But like nowadays, like how many metal bands actually have keyboardists? Like piles of them. And I'm not saying Iron Maiden was the first, but I distinctly remember that as being frowned upon at that time by the purist mindset. But the purist mindset is a hold-fast mindset. People cling to old ideas because in their view it was perfection.
If you look into some other genres though that are using that as part of their live performance as a whole, like you have some keyboardists that will have multiple different effects and things that they actually perform live. Though it be programmed into a keyboard, it's still your instrument.
Yeah.
You're still using that live. I don't know if those, because I mean we obviously, and again we keep going back to this, yes, we're metalheads, yay, we know the things in our community, but do we know that, are there people out there that have that same purist group of people that frown upon that in other genres?
Oh, absolutely. Like I see them all the time, like on like social discussion and whatnot. It's not a metal thing. It's a music appreciation thing. Some people just have this hold-fast idea that it's like, no, if there's not someone physically playing it on stage, it doesn't belong there. But in terms of an audience appreciation, it's like people want to have their minds blown, and you want to do that with your oral soundscape.
It just sounds to me like there's a very vast majority of listeners.
It doesn't even matter.
But
we are discussing the evolution. We're not clinging to this old idea. So let's talk about, all right, you're interested in the subject. How do we do it? How do we create this? How do we move forward? How do we jazz up our live performance?
Well, I would say find a balance where you're not over delivering on your intro piece, and try and put it realistically in line with what you're doing physically on stage.
Yeah.
So don't put unrealistic things in something that would get people's hopes up, and then all of a sudden you guys can't.
Yeah, and then you're a big disappointment afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
it's not even you being disappointing to your audience. You would probably end up disappointing yourselves if you are very serious about that sort of thing.
But let's get practical, all right? So let's say we have a intro piece to our set. Like, someone had to create that intro piece, right?
Right.
Who did that? Did one of your band members do it? Or,
Probably.
Or have you stolen it from somewhere?
Have you Googled something and just ripped it? Yeah.
In other words, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But if someone actually created that, someone in your band or someone affiliated with your band, all right, so you have engaged a creative process, which is perfect. I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is the reason we do this, is to engage a creative process, find manifestation of expression. So what I'm basically trying to get to is, like, why stop there? Why stop at just the intro piece? I mean, if you've already engaged this creative expression, why not bring it into other parts of your creative process? Make it part of your songwriting agenda.
I like that idea. I've been also thinking about adding effects to vocals and things like that, just for effect, not for lack of skill, but to emphasize certain points with certain effects to make it larger than life.
Yes, larger than life, because this is what it needs to be.
Exactly.
As a live experience, this is why people are coming to shows. They want that larger than life experience.
I think we need to touch more on this in another episode. I think there's a lot more. There's a lot more of this that needs to be discussed. But yeah, wow. I'm gonna go home and think about this now.
Good. I hope everyone does. Like I say, I'm just introducing some thought process, and I do this from a point of view of, like, where I host shows. Like, we've got a biannual festival, and technically we have to accommodate some of these requests, and some of them are a bit like weird, but I love it. I love it because that thought process is happening. It creates a challenge of how are we going to blow minds, which I wish, as a festival promoter, I wish more bands were thinking this way. Because at the end of the day, as a festival promoter, we have to fill venues.
It's true.
And we've noticed what works and what doesn't.
We've developed a formula almost.
Yeah. The current generation of nightlife people, they want extra.
Yeah. They want to go home with an experience.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that as a songwriter, you now have to feel pressured to do all this stuff. But I'm introducing the idea and saying, think about it, explore it. Or don't be shy to explore it. Don't just shut it out because of a purist point of view.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if there needs to be a little bit extra added to your music, don't be afraid to explore it. Absolutely. Yeah, keep it going. Keep your creative juices flowing, and don't let the opinions of purists and people sway you from your creative direction. I think that would be best. Just stick to your guns. If you have this cool idea, then use it. Don't be afraid of it.
Well, now, I was really keen to actually talk about some of the technologies employed, but I don't know how much time we have left.
Mr. Producer, how much time do we have left?
So, I think we're going to have to carry this on in another episode later. Probably quite a bit later, because we've already got episodes planned.
All right, well, we got to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
It's been the NAT and Paddy McD. We will catch you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to us ramble on about all things music and sound here on Sound Vibes, produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.